In both The Merchant of Venice and Confessions of a Mask, composers explore the tensions in how one achieves self-fulfillment within constructs where masculinity grants status and power. While Shakespeare's Elizabethan-era England enjoyed great economic prosperity, the roles of women within its society were still restricted, and an expectation was placed upon them to live lives centered around their marriage. Similarly, the people of Showa-era Japan, the time in which Mishima wrote and set Confessions of a Mask, were restricted due to a focus on archaic values designed to bolster nationalism pre-World War II. Wrestling with their respective contextual values, these texts ignited new ideas about the ways that performative masculinity can be used strategically to grasp at power and the positive and negative ways it shapes one's identity. In The Merchant of Venice, Portia's individual experience of self-fulfillment is found through her marriage with Bassanio. However, she also embraces a masculine persona to hold power within Venice's patriarchal society, and even undermines the masculinity of her own husband, an idea evocative to the largely disenfranchised Englishwomen of the 16th century. Portia's masculine mannerisms are in part established to the audience through passages such as these. Not the lady of the house, but its lord. Not the servant's mistress, but their master. Portia's self-fashioning via masculine-gendered words creates a tone of control and superiority. This self-fashioning also symbolizes Portia's dominion over her own life, as the feminine caregiver archetype presented is twisted, positioning Bassanio, the person she's speaking to, as a submissive. These masculine quirks of Portia's personality gives her influence within interactions with other Merchant of Venice characters too, attesting to the collective experience of masculinity going to power. These characteristics challenge the Elizabethan assumption that such dominance is impossible for females. Furthermore, lines such as these on the screen reveal her construction as a character Shakespeare's female audience could relate to, making his messages more palatable. In Act 3, Scene 2, Portia hyperbolically diminishes her own current worth as a woman and exaggerates Bassanio's worth. The juxtaposition between these two actions embellishes the happiness she feels to Bassanio for successfully becoming her partner, and highlights the concept of marriage to also be fulfilling for Portia. By writing this self-fulfillment to be found within marriage, a relatable concept for his female audience particularly, Shakespeare also challenges the assumption that a masculine girl, like Portia, is an anomaly. This tension between Portia's projected masculinity, a product of the collective experience of masculinity gaining power, and her individual experience of marriage as a vessel for self-fulfillment, dog whistles to the female audience that they too can hold power by embracing masculine traits. In Confessions of a Mask, the protagonist's individual experience of desiring self-fulfillment drives him to emulate masculinity, collectively recognized as a conduit for power. However, it is positioned as well out of his reach. This conflict between a clear set of goals and an inherent inability to reach them is used to challenge Japanese masculine-focused values. In the Showa era, the cultural narrative of Japanese masculinity was largely influenced by nationalistic propaganda that drew from a romanticized view of early samurai. An older teenage character of Confessions of a Mask, Omi, named from a hereditary noble title of ancient Japan, epitomizes these samurai masculine values, strength of both body and character. The relationship between him and his peers maintains the collective experience of masculinity granting influence, as evidenced through the above passage. In this passage, Omi is constructed as a figure that transcends humanity through the simile of their pupils mirrored the clouds and blue skies of May. Passive voice in the second paragraph, and the final tricolon of for youth, for life, for supremacy. This is further emphasized through the metaphor materializing the admiring tones of his classmates as a tangible feature of the atmosphere. These interactions attest to the collective experience of masculinity granting influence. However, by distinguishing Omi from the rest of the boys, Mishima frames the masculinity that his character represents as something impossible to achieve. The protagonist too is swept up in this fascination with Omi, and declares that he will fashion himself to mirror the character. However, he does not possess the same traits nor ability of Omi, and his efforts to imitate his character extend only to weak attempts at intimidation. The contrast between the protagonist's bold declaration of "be strong" and the unimpressive, childish act of glaring at passengers contributes to an ironic, humorous tone harnessed by Mishima to highlight how the masculine ideals purported by Omi cannot be reached by the protagonist. The tension between this urge to have power and admiration like Omi, and being unable to fulfill these ideals, leads to deep insecurities later on in the novel, a concept relatable to audiences from any context. Through the tension between the collective experience of masculinity granting influence and the individual experience of the protagonist's inability to find self-fulfillment, Mishima challenges how much value truly should be placed on masculinity. In both The Merchant of Venice and Confessions of a Mask, the idea that a masculine identity can be imitated for leverage within patriarchal societies is ignited. Although Portia's and Confessions of a Mask's protagonists' embracements of masculine traits yield different results, the paradigms of their society force them both to obscure their identity with facades in order to achieve their goals. This tension between the individual experience of achieving self-fulfillment and the collective experience of masculinity as a conduit for power also extends to a modern stage, and with the advent of social liberation, remains a valuable concept for audiences from all contexts to reflect on.